Everybody's heard of Dick Fosbury. He was the American high jumper who broke the rules of high jumping by jumping over the bar backwards rather than forwards. And he became very famous for that style of jumping, and it became the kind of the standard way of jumping over the high jump bar. But if you actually take a closer look at that story as to how he ended up challenging the rules, you get a much more nuanced and ultimately a more interesting story. When he first started jumping over the bar backwards, his coaches told him to stop. They told him he was an idiot trying to do something differently because it wasn't working, it was dangerous, and he was a good 10, 15 centimeters below the standards of the people who were doing well. But he persevered with his new style of jumping, and he got a lucky break when the world champion, a Russian, broke his leg in a motorbike accident immediately before the Mexico Olympics, which is the point at which Dick Fosbury won the gold medal and became famous as a result of that. That story which I've captured in a nutshell, gives us an interesting insight into what it takes to change things, because Dick Fosbury was not an overnight success. Dick Fosbury had to be very tenacious, stubbornly continuing to jump in an unusual way when his coaches were telling him to stop. He had to rely on other people perhaps having unfortunate mishaps along the way. He stole his moment at the Mexico Olympics, and ultimately he prevailed, although interestingly, he never became the world record holder. Why am I telling you the story about Dick Fosbury? For me, he is a nice metaphorical example of what we need in business. We need a few more unreasonable people, people who challenge the world as it is. I'm referring to the famous George Bernard Shaw quote that basically we need the unreasonable people in this world to adapt the world to their worldviews. So we can think of Steve Jobs as a fairly contemporary example of somebody who had this reality distortion field whereby they persisted in trying to persuade everybody to believe in their worldview. A contemporary example again would be Elon Musk, the guy behind Tesla Motors, behind SpaceX, behind a whole series of crazy new schemes which helps to take us forward in unpredictable ways. Now, these are very famous people, but within any organization that I've ever studied or worked in or researched, I occasionally find these unreasonable people who are trying to do things a little bit differently. And of course, many of them get shouted down. Many of them get told, it's not your place, it's not your job, that's a crazy idea, it won't work. Many of them get frustrated, they leave, they abandon that organization. Some of them subsequently take their ideas elsewhere. The point that I want to make is twofold. First of all, if you are one of those unreasonable people, there are certain tactics that you have to adopt in order to be successful. You've got to be experimental. You've got to keep trying your new ideas. You've got to, like Dick Fosbury in the high jump era, find your metaphorical safety mat, the thing that allows you to land safely without breaking your neck. You've got to also seize your moment. You've got to see when the opportunities arise, when your arch rival ends up being unable to compete in the tournament. You grab that opportunity, you steal the limelight, and you get your idea popularized in that way. The other point I want to make is that as managers of others, as leaders of big organizations, these sort of unreasonable people are the ones that we actually need to nurture. These are our greatest asset. These are the people who tell us when the world is moving in a different direction than the way we thought. They're the people who come up with the new products and service ideas. The trouble is, they're often misfits. They often don't quite fit into the normal way of things. And we have to work very hard to allow these people to have the space to breathe, to come up with their ideas, to pursue them. And sometimes we also have to allow or condone that some of their ideas are going to fail. Not every Dick Fosbury is in fact a success. So we've got to be much more tolerant of failure. We've got to give space to our unreasonable colleagues to allow their ideas to surface and to come forward. It's only if we encourage those sort of people that ultimately we're going to help to make our own organizations, whatever size or shape, fit for the future.